This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the Chief of Naval Operations makes his fighting instructions to the fleet. Admiral Daryl Caudle is here. The real bottleneck for software deployment as agencies seek fielded, useful systems. And solving the Navy's hardest problems for unmanned. Interoperability could be the key to successful joint operations. Welcome to FedGov Today in Washington, D.C., on YouTube and around the world on the American Forces Network. I'm George Jackson. Francis is off today. The Navy's new fighting instructions detail how the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Daryl Caudle, expects his service to fight and win wars. He released them this week at West 2026 in San Diego and joined us for this exclusive conversation.
Admiral, great to see you again. Thank you for joining me. I'm fascinated, as I mentioned before we turned the cameras on, about the semantics here. This is not a fighting strategy. This is not a fighting concept. These are fighting instructions. Yes, why'd you use that term, sir?
I thought it was appropriate that to talk to my fleet and the folks that are conducting naval warfare, they give very clear-eyed understanding of where I think we need to go as a Navy to handle the threats of the future with the resources that we're given, and to optimize how we actually lay down that Navy in a way to make it most effectively used. And with the idea, and which is key to the document, without ever losing sight of our differentiated value to the joint force and to the nation.
Throughout the 30-some pages of this, almost 40, you mentioned that idea of resources a number of times. You're very careful, I notice, you and your team, to couple what's possible, what's reasonable to think resource-wise, to the capability that you need to deliver to the warfighter.
That's exactly right. When I look at the national security strategy and the national defense strategy in total, it becomes very obvious that to do what it was required in those strategy, Francis, is to have a Navy that is extremely flexible. I've got to be able to mass my combat power where I need to against peer adversaries, but I've got to cover down in a simultaneous way a lot of things all over the globe. And with a Navy that's not big enough to do all that in the common way I would like to do that, with strike groups perhaps, or a lot of submarines, then I've got to have ways to tailor that force applicable to the threat environment.
You have 4 campaign areas, and I read, single accountable officials are directed to take their own action to meet the intent of these fighting instructions in each of those areas. First one of those is battle-ready soldiers. The CNP obviously will take the point on that. On each of these, I'll ask you, if you would, to just give me a thumbnail of what your instructions are in that area.
Well, you know, for battle-ready sailors is to making sure that a sailor is ready for combat. I do that by improving their mastery over what they need to know. That's how I train them. That's how I do continuous education with them. That's how I give them the tools to be effective on the deck plate. It's also much more than that. For them to truly be ready, I have to give them quality of service, and I got to take care of their families. And when I put all that together, then I get somebody who's ready to go into harm's way.
When you and I spoke at the Pentagon the last time, you talked about the fact that you were, that was the first thing you got after when you became CNO, and for that reason, was what are the conditions under which the sailors that I have can work?
Yes.
What have you seen in the time that you spent going out to see where those sailors live and how they live that informs the way that you're going to have CMP get after this?
Well, first I would tell you we're just enjoying record recruiting and record retention, bringing in about 10,000 more than our losses for 2 consecutive years. So that's not by happenstance. That's tremendous work by our recruiting force. And our retention has also been at an all-time high. That's because of the mission. And so when I go out to around the world, and I've been traveling quite a bit, what I get the feedback on are the things I need to work on. It's not all, roses, but what they're telling me is they are extremely proud of the missions they're involved in, and they love serving, and they want to actually, contribute in a meaningful way. So the feedback I'm getting is how I can best help them do that.
The second campaign area is battle-ready force. The SAO for that one is the Deputy CNO for Installations and Logistics. What's involved there, sir?
Well, I think it's two things. A battle-ready force, one, has to be grounded in what I call the foundry, in my foundry fleet and fight. So you can't have a battle-ready force without a world-class foundry. This is the maintenance facilities. These are the hangars. These are the piers. These are the installation and infrastructure from schoolhouses to galleys that we actually launch our Navy from to be world-class. This also ties to my ability to have combat surge-ready units to flow out of cycle if we have to go fight, and then to ensure that the deployed forces are being maintained while they're forward deployed, and the ones that are in the depot are getting out on time.
I'll ask you this question about a number of these. What's the delta, in your view right now, between where you are and where you want to be?
Well, I think the delta is, if I take combat surge ready, we have a target of 80%. On average, I'm probably about 10% below my target. So I'm about at 70% there. So we got work to do to get on target. Gaps at sea, I can talk about that. I've chipped away at over 3,000 of those just in my time as CNO already. And I've got a ways to go there, about 15,000 additional gaps at sea across our Navy. So, but we're making headway.
The third item is Battle Force for today and tomorrow. The Deputy CNO for Integration and Capabilities and Resources has that one. What will you expect to see there?
Well, this is about our force design. This is about how I envision the Navy of the future to actually ensure that we're not only fielding a ready force today, but we're looking very wide-eyed at the threats of tomorrow with the capability and the curves of those technological improvements that our adversaries are enjoying, the lower cost of entry to actually have very effective asymmetric capabilities, and that I am fielding a Navy that can be afforded, but can be sustained, can be manned, organized, and equipped effectively going forward to actually meet those demands globally. So that is probably, of all the things I spend my time on day to day, is in that third line of effort.
You also, though, have a number of guiding instruments already in this. I read guided by the hedge strategy, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, Navy warfighting concept, Navy deterrence concept, and force design 2045. That one piqued my interest. Is that something that I have not, that I'm not familiar with yet?
You're not familiar with it. It hasn't been released yet, and so it's something we're working on. And so that gets after what is that Navy that has that type of outlook. All this is with Secretary Phelan is about shipbuilding, shipbuilding, shipbuilding. And the president's made that perfectly clear that we want a renaissance of shipbuilding. And that takes a lot of different shipyards to be involved with this. Foreign partners have got to be part of this, and certainly a workforce that can actually deliver it.
I will look forward to discussing that with you or a designee when there's more to learn about Force Design 2045. The fourth in your campaign plan is Global Battle Integration. Deputy CNO for Operations Plan, Strategy, and Warfighting Development has that one. What's encompassed there, sir?
There is an acknowledgement that the U.S. Navy cannot fight alone. We have to be globally integrated. We have to be integrated with our joint force partners. We have to be integrated with allies and partners. And we have to be integrated with stakeholders. That's Congress. Okay, that's the Office of Secretary of the War, and maybe perhaps most important, the American people have got to understand what our Navy, its differentiated value, what is it I bring to national prosperity. And so that integration is extremely important because we don't fight alone.
I mentioned the hedge strategy, and you write in that part of the fighting instructions, much of the job of the CNO is to continue defining, resourcing, and building these forces in service of the Navy's enduring global missions. 5 pieces to the hedge strategy, 5 core attributes is what you call them. How did you determine those 5, and how do they contribute to what you want to get out of the force?
Well, I think for your listeners, the core to hedging, if you will, is that a one-size-fits-all Navy is not a good approach. That's why the battleship and the Golden Fleet Initiative is so important with the frigate on the other end to give me this high-low mix. We already have our aircraft carrier as a capital ship, great submarine force, and Arleigh Burks. But to increase the degrees of freedom that I can package tailored forces in a way that I can deliver that for combatant commanders to solve the problems they need without giving them an all or nothing approach. I don't want them to have nothing and then wait on the carrier strike group to show up. I can do better than that. What's going to enable that, and perhaps put that on steroids a bit, is what I call the tailored offsets in the document. And that's how I utilize smart investments through our unmanned capabilities, robotic and autonomous systems, in a carefully crafted way that solve my key operational problems around the globe. So when you tailor my existing general purpose forces with these tailored offsets, then I can make my Navy punch bigger than its current weight class would indicate.
You can find a link to the new fighting instructions and read more about them on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, agencies look for solutions that are 80% ready to close the gap between development and deployment. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems. Streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation, we drive it. Maximus.
Welcome back. Innovation only matters when it reaches the mission. That's according to Maximus Vice President Brian Martz. He says software factories may enable agencies to move faster than ever, but speed in development doesn't always translate to speed in the field. He joined Francis in the field at West 2026.
Brian, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing organizations run into as they're trying to switch from an innovation model to actually turning that into operational capability?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we face in the DIB side of things, on the industry side, is you're spot on. If you take Maximus, for example, we're a traditional sustainment company. We do a lot of call center stuff. So transitioning to support, at the speed of need, I'll say, to get capabilities forward, the services have all done a really good job of building software factories, but there's a gap right now in getting ATO'd capabilities to the edge devices. So building out a platform as a service, something you deploy those things out quickly that are secure, deployable, and get to those end users more quickly. And companies need to adjust on how we've done the traditional build it, test it again, and then deploy it. We've just got to accelerate that. So at Maximus, we've set up an innovation lab, and we're trying to get after it at the far left end of the cycle as opposed to the far right end of the cycle.
You used a term before we went on the air that syncs with what a lot of the uniform leaders are talking to me about here, and that is finding solutions that are 80% ready. Why is that important from your perspective as a vendor serving the government, and why do you think that's important to the government people who are looking for solutions?
I've been doing this over 40 years. 20 plus years as a green suiter, and the last 20 as industry. And I've seen more programs fail trying to complete that last 5 to 10% to meet the specs and meet the requirements when the capability is really force ready, and trying to get it perfect. We spend a whole lot of money trying to get that last, eighth of a mile when it's not really necessary. If we can get 80% solutions out in the field today that are capable of what the mission needs are, again, at the, need of speed, that's the key, getting them downrange more quickly. So let's stop wasting time on trying to make it perfect, and let's make it operational.
Are you seeing more willingness to accept that and not require that last mile?
Yeah, in fact, I can't tell you how many events like today I've been at that the PM shops and the operational shops, they're all saying the same thing. Give me a solution that is 80% there, that's operational, that I can put my warfighters' hands today on those edge devices and get after it.
Mm-hmm. What are the techniques that you're seeing those organizations use, and what are the techniques that a company like yours can help them do to close that loop, to get something into the field that does the job, that is that 80% ready?
Yeah, so the first thing is you've got to build the security into the system and the capability. It's got to be built in and baked in all the way through the process. You can't get to the 11th hour and then think about that as, oh yeah, we got to run through this ATO process, and we're not there. So you've got to do that up front. And the second thing is, got to talk to the users. You have to understand that what they told us a year ago as their mission need may have evolved, and if we can evolve with them during that development cycle, then you can deploy something that is capable.
You anticipated my next question, which is the importance of talking to the end user and knowing how it works in that person's hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up as an operator. There's nothing more frustrating than finally getting a system delivered to us and we're like, wait a minute, my mission has changed and this does me no good. And then, at a tactical unit or strategic unit, they sit in the closet because there's no utility for it.
How do you propose that some of the PMs that you talked about and from a vendor side, how do you measure the progress and measure the success in situations like this when you're trying to transition from an idea to a capability?
Again, it's all about the communication between industry and our mission partners, sitting down with those PMs, doing iterative demos of the capability along with that operational community, making sure that you're closing that gap from, the front end where you've innovated to where you can get it operationalized, having that free and open dialogue.
Quick final thought. When you come to a place like this, what do you try to learn and what do you try to talk to folks about?
Yeah, I think that's the mistake I've made a lot in my career. I go with an agenda. Got to be flexible and listen to what this user community is telling us, because what you think you're going to hear isn't always the case. So just be open, listen to what their real needs are, and then think about what you've developed back home that maybe could help fix that problem or meet that challenge for them.
Learn more about deployment, authorization, and sustainment across edge environments on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the urgency around unmanned systems and the next big step toward air dominance for the fleet. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
It's an important thing. And I would start with something that seems a little bit counterintuitive to many. Innovation, and let's put AI in the center of that, is really about enriching the employee experience. Because AI is really there to help foster and allow for the information worker, the employee, to become more, I think the term I'll use is human decision-making power. So it empowers that human decision-making. So we don't look at it as a substitute for human. We look at it as an augmentation of their ability to make better decisions. So a frontier agency is going to empower those individuals to actually become part of the innovation cycle.
Welcome back. The phrase air dominance looks different than it did just a few years ago. Navy leaders say the rise of unmanned or autonomous systems requires new approaches to fielding strike capabilities, test and evaluation, as well as joint operations. All topics of conversation between Francis and Rear Admiral Keith Hash.
Admiral, it's great to have you here. Thanks very much for joining me. What challenges is interoperability presenting in the unmanned sphere right now?
Francis, great question. We have a lot of entrants that want to come into the unmanned sphere. And as a department, as a Navy, we put out a lot of standards that we give them. Hey, build your techniques, your procedures, your interoperability, your connection to us in this way. And, those standards show what they need to do. But, interpretation of those standards matter. And so as they come into our sphere, as they come in, bring their tools and their products to us, making sure they work with the other things in the same sphere, with our manned platforms, with our other unmanned platforms. It's really important. And so, the challenge is creating the environments where they can come in and test their systems out effectively, creating a realistic environment, creating a safe environment for them to do that, and then making sure that we work diligently with them in close connection so that they interpret those standards, interpret those expectations effectively.
You and your team use a term called unmanned dominance. What does that term mean? What does fulfillment of that term mean to you?
Yeah, so, we want to be a dominant force no matter what. That's the point. We don't want to enter a fair fight. We want to make sure that what we bring to bear is a deterrent to those who want to bring harm to our nation and to our allies. And if they decide to want to come to blows, then they're going to lose. And so whether it's manned or unmanned, we want that to be dominant. And so we've got to learn how to apply the best wisdom we've learned over conflict through our many years of being in conflict and where we anticipate conflict to be in the future and apply that. We want to create realistic scenarios so that our unmanned platforms can operate in those scenarios. The contested environment is not going to be a friendly one, whether that's kinetically unfriendly or non-kinetically unfriendly or cyber unfriendly. We've got to make sure that these systems are ready and hardened to operate and to dominate, to bring the effects that they're intended to bring, to work as a team. No single platform, no single unit is going to operate in conflict in the future, and so they need to understand their part and how they work together with the other units, with the other unmanned systems, with the manned systems that will be providing command and control and support to those unmanned systems.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned over time, and how do those inform those standards that you talked about that you put out to industry?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've learned this over many years of acquisition myself. The industry and government also don't operate independently, that we have to team together. And, I've never seen a successful team where the government threw something over the fence and said, y'all go build it and then bring it to me. The lesson learned is we have got to work together. We may contract and give it to industry. We need their best foot forward. We need them to bring their best ideas. But we also need a team up to make sure that we're iterating. I've even seen it recently. We built a bunch of buildings in my location that came from an earthquake. And to get it right, we had to have our own teams working alongside the contractors to solve those problems along the way. That happens with our defense industrial partners as well. When they start building to the requirements that are given, people do their very best to develop those requirements, and those are the right requirements. But once again, it's about interpretation. It's about when you apply the real thing to it, we've got to be an iterative conversation. And I think that's super important. So whenever we award a contract to an industry partner, that partner should be expecting that the government's going to be there teaming with them. And the government partner needs to be expecting, hey, I've got to be a partner with this industry partner along the way. When we talk about the defense industrial base, it's really their warfighting partners. We can't build the Navy we need today, whether it's manned or unmanned, without them. And we have to work together as a team. And if we don't do that, then we're going to end up with the wrong thing at the wrong time, and it won't be that interoperable solution that we need.
I read that the Navy has gone from hands full of unmanned vehicles several years ago to hundreds, maybe approaching thousands now. What has that scale meant for the way that you approach what you're doing?
Yeah, that's the scale has been interesting, and how do we go evaluate that? And so, we would love to have the airspace and sea space to do that constantly. And actually, in my command, I actually do have a lot of that airspace and sea space. There are challenges to do that, and we do that on a periodic basis. But you can't put enough boats at sea or aircraft in the air to do that and really learn the lessons you need. And so we're focusing on how do we do that in a virtual, constructive environment, building digital models of these systems and creating areas where we can do thousands and millions of runs to work together. And I think that's another area where we're working with industry to set the standards for, hey, when we put you on contract, you need to deliver a digital model of your system in addition to this hardware. So we can iterate early, learn fast, and then bring solutions that are not always going to be the full-fledged solution on day one. Bring something that's half-baked so we can learn from it with each other, and you can go finish up your design and finish your development with those lessons learned. But we do actually create large sea spaces. We've had opportunity to bring large amounts of unmanned surface vessels, and guess what? They have to have a opposing force. And so I have a team that does that as well. And those are autonomous vehicles, and they're learning from each other. And it's been a pretty phenomenal to watch it happen. But it creates opportunities and challenges as we need to communicate with that many systems, as we do it safely to protect the public. That's also using the same waters and airspace and working with other agencies outside of the Department of War to make sure that we're doing that effectively.
We just have a couple of minutes left, but I want to add two more layers onto that scale piece. The Joint Force, because it's not just Navy, you're working with your brothers in the Marine Corps, the other services, and allies and partners too, in a potential fight that you'll go into. Yes. How does that connect with the way that you're thinking about scaling at the speed that you're scaling at?
Yeah, you cannot operate without thinking about the Joint Force. We, as a Naval Air Warfare Center, are very focused on the carrier air wing and the weapons that are going with that. But that carrier air wing depends upon the rest of the Navy. the air side of the Navy, the surface side of the Navy, the subsurface side, and then it definitely depends on the Air Force and our brothers and sisters in the Air Force, and of course the rest of the Naval Force, the Marine Corps, are that expeditionary force out in front of us. And so we create opportunities. We have test events through the year where we bring those joint and even the ally forces together. We have an event in the fall. We brought folks from Australia, from Canada, from the UK to totally participate in a fully joint allied engagement of what does that look like with, hey, long range kill chains, long range fires that we've got to implement, the effects we need to bring over the horizon. And we've learned quite a bit bringing those together. We also try to do that in a digital environment. How do we bring our digital twins of our systems together so we can collaborate? So we, in our laboratories and in our virtual environments that we've created, we bring those tools together to learn and grow. But yeah, we can't do it without our joint force. We can't do it without our brothers and sisters in the joint allied environment.
Read more about the challenges and opportunities posed by unmanned aviation on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. I'll be right back.
The field has changed very much so. The field has changed where the position descriptions of the records managers have changed. Now records managers follow multiple workflows, many of which are based in technology, as well as still managing the paper. That was what we started with initially.
Audio, video, imagery, to be able to kind of get past that and know what's inside and intelligently categorize and classify it and derive insights. As that video customer we have that runs a Spanish language program, they had 50 years worth of video and they didn't know what they had. They just had a label on a tape. That doesn't really tell you what's inside.
Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, ACT IAC's Emerging Tech Demo Day, a mission-themed tech showcase connecting government leaders with ready solutions, practical demos, and high-value teaming conversations. Join government, industry, and academia for lightning talks around a predefined set of use cases, like space systems, robotics, autonomous workflows, or cyber defense. It's Wednesday, March 18th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Caresoft Conference and Collaboration Center in Reston, Virginia. Learn more and register at fedgovtoday.com/events. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30 with guests from the Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller and the Pentagon's Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office. I'm George Jackson. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.